Okay. Well, thanks, August. August is here from Minimalist Living UK and is going to share with us this morning on this simplicity workshop. So I'll hand over to August. Just a reminder to keep yourself muted if you're not speaking.
Great morning, everyone. Have you enabled for me to share my screen, Danielle? Okay, great. Brilliant. Oh, one sec, let me get sorted. Okay, great. Can everyone hear me okay? I'll get Danielle on the screen to give me a thumbs up. We all good? Okay, great. So, it's so weird having everyone on mute. It's so quiet. But yeah, so welcome everyone this morning. Thank you for giving up your time to be here today. And today I'm going to be looking at Christian minimalism, which is a little bit different to simplicity, and we'll get on to that. But I really hope we have a great workshop thinking about what it means to live a meaningful life with less. As Danielle said, my name is August. I run Minimalist Living UK, where you can find loads of blogs and free resources from our workshop today. And you can always get in touch with me as well about coaching if you're interested. So let's move on. So today, for those of you who like to kind of know what we're going to be getting up to, we are going to be looking at 3 different aspects of Christian minimalism: definitions and why of Christian minimalism, looking at some of the teachings of Jesus, and thinking about some practices and values that we might want to implement. So first of all, I think it's really important for us to think about why we might need something like minimalism or simplicity in our world today. We know from the saints and from Jesus' teaching himself that simplicity and kind of giving money to the poor and all of those kind of values have been around for a long, long time. But why might we need to refocus in our current age? Here's some statistics for you. In the 1970s, loads of sci-fi writers believed that in our age of abundance, we would be living longer, working less, and enjoying more leisure time. Yet, for some reason, it feels like sometimes that we're going backwards. At the moment, a 2015 YouGov survey found that 37% of British workers believe that their jobs are meaningless. And whilst not every job has to be vocational, all of our jobs, having a sense of purpose and meaning in our work contributes to greater life satisfaction and reduced stress. If we're going to improve our society as a whole, we need to maybe rethink about work. Also, the average person touches their phone now 2,617 times a day. I don't know about you, but that seems a really astounding statistic. And for the top % of users, that's around 5,400 times a day that we're touching our phones. And each of these disruptions and interruptions stops conversations, but also it stops those moments when we're able to observe where God is at work in our lives and then the lives of our neighbors. Also, we live in a world of abundance, and from the mid-century onwards, we have been flooded with cheap market goods. Whilst toys are great for fun and for children, the average 10-year-old, in a recent article by the Telegraph, now has £7,000 worth of toys in the UK, but only plays with £300 worth of them. And 2 different studies, one from Oxford University and a German-based study, show that actually having too many toys creates distraction, leading to poor quality play, and it impacts children's concentration. And lastly, coming back to our electronic devices, a 2015 study by Microsoft showed that people now lose their concentration around 8 seconds. And this has gone down from 12 seconds previously. Not only is this worth noting because of the impact it has on education and our ability to concentrate on things like our work, but also when we're interacting with others, in order for us to truly relate, we need to be able to understand really complex issues like structural racism, like globalization. So having our attention span limited also impacts our ability to relate to others, which is something that we know that God really cares about. You know, one of those most famous parts of the Bible is love yourself, love your neighbor. And thinking about how technology is impacting our ability to relate is really going to be a core part of that going forward. So a little bit about my story and why I'm so passionate about minimalism. I became a minimalist 7 years ago. At the time, I was really struggling with my mental health. I was struggling with being able to pray and being able to find time to go to church. And if I'm honest, I was miserable. But through minimalism, I've been able to reduce my personal possessions by up to 80%. I've been able to increase my concentration, find time for prayer, find time for spiritual journaling, and I've been able to become debt-free, which has not only reduced my ability to be less stressed, but also be generous and have time for others. So I keep talking a little bit about minimalism, so it might be helpful to think about what minimalism is. Most people have a broad concept of minimalism from art and style. They might think of minimalism in architecture, as we can see in the picture on the left, or they might think about things like Apple products, or they might think about artwork. But minimalism can also be a lifestyle. So, oh, 1 second. So here's a couple of definitions of minimalism. Minimalism entails defining what is essential and removing the rest. Also, minimalism is the removal of the distractions. So we know from our own observations and the statistics that we've just heard that we live in a world of overstimulation and more. Not only does this impact our families, finances, well-being, and work lives, it also has a huge impact on our faith. How many of us feel too busy to pray, too busy to engage in mission, to attend church? How many of us feel when we come home at the weekend so overwhelmed by all of the tasks that we need to do that we struggle to engage with things such as Sabbath and rest and celebration, all the good things that God wants for us? Minimalism is a tool and a set of principles that can help us to strip away the excess and overload to drill down to what is truly important. The minimalist journey often starts with decluttering our homes, and that's because our objects are often the most obvious form of clutter. All have a negative impact in our, but minimalism doesn't stop there. Commitment clutter, relationship clutter, digital clutter, and emotional clutter all can have a negative impact on our lives. The aim is not to just to declutter your home through minimalism, but to declutter your lives so you can reclaim your time, your money, and your well-being to live in the fullness of God. So what I'm hoping to do right now is I don't know if we're able to do any breakout rooms because there's so many of us, or whether we could have one big discussion together. I think breakout rooms might be ideal. Are you able to facilitate that, Danielle? And I've got 3 questions for you, which if I put them in the chat now, then we can have okay, go back. Sorry guys, 1 second.
How many breakout rooms would you like?
How many people have we got on the call today?
Let's see. I can't see everything because the screen share is on. Let's see. Oh, 17.
17. So maybe like three groups, so people have enough time to introduce themselves and to have a decent chat.
Okay. How long should we do this?
So I am thinking we can have 15-20 minutes.
Okay. All right.
And then everyone has a chance to contribute, and I've just popped the questions in the chat. So the questions I've put for you to discuss: what are the biggest distractions in your life right now? How might these be impacting your faith life? And what would you like to see change? Everyone back now?
Yep, everyone's back now.
Yeah, so just wondering if anyone would like to share some highlights from their group. I feel like I'd love to share a couple that came out of ours. I think people said that they definitely feel overburdened, particularly by their digital lives, having hundreds of emails to deal with. How do you deal with that? How do you strip that back? Also, we were talking about precious items, or what some people might call sentimental items. How do you know how many of those to keep? How many do you let go of? And how do you also, just let go of things if you think that you might need them later? So we had lots of really great discussions. And lastly, stuff about being, having children and about accepting gifts, because often we get given lots of stuff and we don't want to be rude, we don't want to immediately throw it away, but also particularly, thinking about children's parties, you get a lot of clutter and stuff with that. So does anyone else want to share some of the kind of distractions that they were kind of talking about in their groups?
As I said to Danielle, we didn't really hunt very far or go very broad on ours, because the thing that came up right at the beginning was social media, and that really did affect everybody. So that that really did seem to be something that lots of people had a problem with. But we did talk about probably trying to do things in a place rather than like on Facebook or something where everything is there, seeing if you could transfer some things to the sort of place, the sort of virtual place that not many other groups use. So somebody said they were in a group on a platform called Circle, and there weren't any other groups on there. So you just go there when you're doing that, and that's all you see, and you don't get distracted by anything else. And we talked about being really intentional about what you do and when you do it, and maybe even restricting the time of day that you turn on something or go and look at something, and looking at things maybe twice a day, and that's it. Which all seem really big things, steps. And also there's the factor that a lot of people that we're associated with and groups and things like that are on those platforms. So they're not easy steps to take always.
Yeah,
and
it's really worth bearing in mind that a lot of people who are housebound or people who are disabled rely on social media for that social contact. So just being aware when we're putting in some of these practices, who we might be leaving behind, just to be aware of that. Thanks, Nats. That was really great. Is there anyone else who would like to share from their group? Were we in 3 groups? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, we had a discussion around letting go of sort of difficult things that have happened to you, because I was just asking about, I won't go into any detail, but just if you have some unfinished business with something where you kind of are trying to let go of something because you've done everything you can to resolve it, but it kind of remains unresolved, if that makes sense. And people in the group had lots of really good suggestions actually about sort of asking God to bless people that have hurt you, because we're talking really about letting go of hurt and harm, I think, in this sense. Replacing, like asking God to kind of replace your feelings with love, and then kind of a kind of healthy indifference as well, and just being in the presence of God to try and allow that to inform what happens next, almost. And then someone was talking about the things that are expected of them to do and what they want to do, or the things that are important for them to do as well, that some of this comes from outside. And then someone was making some really good points about forgiveness and that being a huge part of our lives, because otherwise we kind of get spiritually cluttered with things that have happened. So because I think sometimes we can focus quite easily on the physical tidy, because I always need to tidy up. I'm quite a messy human. Of my flat, I just kind of mess just almost happens around me organically without me doing anything. So I think we kind of went into the sort of more difficult stuff, but I did actually find that really helpful. So I just want to say thank you to the people in my group.
Fantastic, thank you, Kathy. And it's worth noting that there are messy minimalists, and it is okay to be a messy minimalist. And something which I've seen as a tip for people is not that you need to have things tidy all the time, but that you need to learn how to reset your space at the end of the day. And some people, get like a kind of kitchen timer, an egg timer, and just switch it on for 15 minutes. So they do that at the end of their workday or before they go to bed, and just go around and have a tidy up. So if you're a messy person, do not worry, this stuff is for you as well. Great, so I'm just going to go back to the shared screen. Fab. So now I just want to talk a little bit about, what does minimalism look like? You can have all sorts of minimalists in the same way that you can have such a broad, beautiful variety and diversity of Christians. And you can have your Kanye West minimalists who have a $3 million mansion, which is completely white walls, amazing architecture. Or you can have someone like me who's living in supported accommodation with just a few items. What minimalism looks like is going to be different for everyone. And it's really about defining what is enough for you. But just to give you a little kind of visual into my life, one of the things I'd like to talk about is clothing. Courtney Carver over at Project 333 has really, really great tips on how to do things like minimal wardrobes and capsule wardrobes. We all know about the negative effects of fast fashion and our culture for just throwing away clothing. And I think one of the key phrases that I've learned is that we talk about being in an era of materialism, but in fact, we're not materialistic enough. If everything in this world belongs to God, we need to be really caring about the material objects that we bring into our lives. And so one of the ways that I've been very materialistic about my clothing is by having a small limited wardrobe, but everything has to meet some certain criteria. It has to be good quality. It has to fit me really well. It has to make me feel good and try and come from an ethical source, and also be multifunctional. That's the great thing about capsule wardrobes in particular, is that you have, a set of scarves and cardigans and things that you can just mix and match. So you feel like you have 50 outfits and not just 10. But mine is a really simple wardrobe. I have about 3 pairs of jeans, 4 pairs of shoes, including wellies, walking boots, trainers, and fashion boots, about 10 t-shirts. And for me, that's perfectly adequate. And that's been, a long journey getting to there. I haven't just gone, right, because I love the concept of a capsule wardrobe, I'm just going to chuck out all my clothes that I don't want and completely buy a new set of stuff. Most people can't afford to do that. I did go through and go, okay, these particular clothes are too worn, don't fit me anymore, what can I take to the charity shop? But then as clothes were worn out, I was then able to replace them with kind of an intentional mindset. So that's just one aspect of how minimalism can look in a particular person's life. And also, it's really important to remember that whether you love white shirts, wearing black t-shirts all day, or you love African prints, all of that can be part of a kind of minimalist wardrobe in particular. And something I really want to talk about is compassionate minimalism. Often when there are conversations going on within the minimalism movement, it's like, oh yeah, just get rid of all your stuff. Or minimalism looks like this. So for me, as my working theory, compassionate minimalism needs to have 4 different elements. So the first is understanding a kind of variety of needs. In relation to material items and physical possessions, what is essential to me and what is essential to you is going to look really, really different. As a single person, I have very few possessions. Yet a large family, or for example, someone who's an emergency foster carer, will have a different amount of items. Also, if you're someone who's physically disabled, you're going to be having different items to other people. Minimalism is going to look different for everyone. Also, I think culture is really important to consider. A Southeast Asian family might consider that a rice cooker is really essential for them, whereas as a white British person, you know, I'm quite happy to cook rice on the hob, and that's absolutely fine. And also, even within Christianity, Quakers may be more inclined to love white bare walls, whereas if you're Roman Catholic, iconography and having that visual sense of being able to see and feel God may be really, really important, and having those things in your home. Also, when we're thinking about being intersectional and we're thinking about things like class and race, Christine Platt, author of the book Afro Minimalist, which I really recommend, is right to point out that the movement has been dominated by a white aesthetic, and we need to be making space for a variety of views, particularly from ethnic minorities within the movement. And also, the working class is often accused of not caring about environmental issues, yet studies have shown that people on low incomes often have less environmental impact than even ethical middle class consumers, simply because they're just not buying stuff and they're using things like public transport. And most working class folks are already minimalists by force and not necessarily by choice. Minimalism is not about deprivation, and those who've struggled real hardship actually may need support to understand that it's okay to have nice things, and it's okay for them in their position to accumulate possessions, so that they can have access to basic necessities. Also, in my own life, I've experienced economic highs and economic lows, from living with a partner who was earning 50 grand a year to recently becoming homeless and starting over again. And each phase of my life, minimalism has just helped bring clarity to what really truly matters. Also, lastly, our history of trauma also impacts our minimalist journeys. If your life insecurity has been threatened, letting go of things can be much more emotionally difficult. The journey can take longer. My journey has been longer than probably most people's, and that's okay. And people may need to pause their decluttering journey so they can focus on self-care and therapeutic interventions. So just say no one should be shamed or kind of judged for where they are at in the journey. So here's another couple of discussion questions for you. We'll take another kind of 15 minutes out if we're okay to go into groups again. So if you were truly materialistic, how might your life change? And also, what is truly essential to you? What's the most important things that you want to prioritize and keep in your life? And what are some of the things you might want to strip away? So if we could go again into 3 breakout groups just to look at those questions, that would be great. Thanks.
should be, yeah.
Again, so it would be really lovely to hear some kind of winners from our breakout groups. We had some really amazing discussions, and I think particularly around intentionality. What are we intentionally bringing into our homes? What do we kind of just thoughtlessly do, particularly when we're shopping? Particularly thinking about sale shopping. I don't know if you're ever tempted by buying stuff in the sales, and also talking about what matters to the individual, and what do we individually find negative and what do we find positive. So we talked about someone having a tin of paint in their loft for 5 years, it wasn't bothering them, and then they were able to bring it down and use it. But other people talking about digital clutter and how that was a real burden for them, and what it might look like to maybe offload some of that. So yeah, we had some really, really good discussions. Is anyone else kind of wanting to feedback some stuff from their group? We'd really love to hear what you guys were chatting about as well.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about sharing, that we don't all need to own everything. We can share equipment with a community of people, and we just explored a little bit around how that was a win-win situation, because it develops community, and also minimalism, you just don't need to have a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, and that was a lot of food for thought there for me anyway.
Brilliant.
How to do. Hi, Eddie. Yeah, and sharing, growing different things, one person growing somebody else growing something else, and sharing rather than everybody growing the same things and that type of thing. So yeah, so we got into sharing things.
Yeah, and I think that ability to share creates connection, creates community. It's not about codependence, it's about interdependence.
Yeah.
And when I recently moved into my flat, I really thought about my crockery and glasses, and I thought, what do I actually need? Because so I've got 2 plates, I've got 2 glasses, 2 wine glasses, and if I had a bunch of people around, would that be enough? Probably not. But I have housemates who have plates, and I have housemates that I can borrow glasses from. So I don't personally individually need to own all of those things, and it opens up a chance for me to communicate with my housemates, to have a conversation, to share things. So I think you're totally right. We don't always need to have everything to hand. And obviously it depends, I'm very lucky to have really lovely housemates. So I think it depends on your situation. And I know in Birmingham, we've got a share shop where you can borrow things. But obviously if you have to be able to have the transport to access that. So again, there's no guilt or shame in thinking about what is right for your particular circumstances. But yeah, sharing, that's a great concept. Does anyone else want to share anything from their groups?
Yeah, we did briefly mention the share shop actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it did come up. Because some people were saying it's difficult to get things out of the house well. You don't want to just throw stuff away or take it to a charity shop where you know that at the end of the day it probably will get thrown away in some cases, depending on what it is. But it's hard to know what to do with it so that it will get used if it's still got life. So the share shop came up as a mention in that. We also, we didn't really come up with particular answers to those struggles and those difficulties, because if somebody can reuse something, it is very hard to get rid of it. Perhaps are we honouring things too much if we've got that much stuff that is sitting waiting to go to somebody else or to somewhere else? Somebody said they've got 6 bags of stuff waiting to go out of the house. I've got about 6 bags of garden waste waiting to go to green recycling somewhere, because where I could actually pay the council to take it away, but they probably wouldn't do anything with it. So it is difficult to know. We talked about paring down when people move, and what do you really need? And when we talked about what is really important to us, I think people tended to think that connectivity and people and companionship. I mentioned my cat. Other people were talking about people and phones and things like that. But things that connect you are probably more important than things that are just things.
Yeah, and I really share that sentiment, Nats, because it's people who make their homes stuff, and often we so think, oh, but if I don't have this, if I haven't tidied the whole house before everyone comes round, and we can get so consumed about appearances rather than realizing that actually people just kind of want to see us and just value us for who we are. And I think that's a really beautiful sentiment that we get from God as well, isn't it? That, we're not going to take any of this stuff with us to the afterlife. It's just going to be us, and it's going to be God, and God loves us just for who we are, not for the things that we have, not for the things that we've achieved, just as we are. And I think that's a really beautiful part of our faith, that we can take with us and communicate with others as well. So I'd just like to look at some Bible passages now, and let me get back to my share screen. So rather than dig into a particular passage today, I just wanted to highlight a few different ones and then extract some kind of overall themes for us to look at for our last set of breakout groups, because we've not got much time left. We've had so many great discussions. So as you can see in the Bible, we have particularly so many teachings from Jesus about money and about possessions. This first one's, from the Sermon on the Mount: do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin will destroy and where thieves will break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. And then we have this second one from Matthew: no one can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve God and you cannot serve money. And then in Luke, we have Jesus expanding a bit more on his passage from the Sermon on the Mount. Fear not, little flock, because your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Provide for yourselves money bags that do not grow old, a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. And also we have this one from Mark as well, which is about, I think it's the passage famously called the young rich man. And Jesus, looking at him, loved him and said to him, you lack one thing. Go sell all that you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me. Disheartened by the saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. And in contrast to this, I also wanted to highlight some passages that are about Jesus and about celebration. This first passage we have is Levi sitting, Jesus at Levi's house. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many that followed him. And the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors. They asked the disciples, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? There's so many passages in the New Testament where Jesus is partying, turning water into wine. So there's so much stuff there that's not about deprivation. And also in this last passage, a classic one from John: I am the gate. Whoever comes through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So I feel like there's some overriding themes. This is a bit tongue in cheek, but you know, Jesus is saying, don't hoard loads of stuff. It's not going with you to the afterlife. Give your excess away to those who need it more. Don't look to your possessions or your money to give you value or to save you. Look to your relationships, your community, look to God, and enjoy life in all its fullness. Celebrate, eat together, love one another. And I think so much of what we've been talking about today is about balance. And I think particularly within the Christian community, we can often take things to extremes. So we can either go extreme prosperity gospel, and we can have mega pastors with millions of dollars, and often that can feel really inspiring and aspirational for some people. And also at the other end, we can have people who go into poverty deliberately and deprive themselves in the name of the gospel. But what I feel is Jesus is asking us is to have balance and to find that balance for each of us. So my last kind of set of breakout groups, I would love for us to look at things about practices and about balance. So what defines enough for you? I think we've touched on this a little bit already, but what might enough look for us? And like we've said, within compassionate minimalism, that's going to look different for each one of us. And also, what practices might you like to adopt going forward? I know it's the start of a new year. We always want to think about how we might review our spiritual practices during this time. For example, could taking the Sabbath be something that you might want to do on a weekend, on a Saturday or a Sunday? Switch off your devices. Or we've talked a little bit about practices such as limiting screen time. So if we could just go into breakout groups just for kind of the next 10 minutes, and then I'll have a couple of minutes back together to finish off, just to maybe look at these couple of questions. So if Danielle, if you could be amazing and just pop us into breakout groups for 10 minutes, I know it's not long, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Got everyone?
Yeah, should be.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left. If we could have any really quick highlights from people. We were talking about how you get children on board with kind of practices of decluttering, and also when we're looking around our homes, thinking about do these items have a positive or a negative effect, and the afternoon activity will really help with some of that. And is this impacting my faith life? Is there any other couple of bits that people want to chip in from their groups? I know we didn't have long for that last set of discussion questions.
We had three things, all of which are very quick. One was about with regards to work, finding work that's worthwhile and doing something that we find is life-giving to us and beneficial to us, and pace ourselves in it. So, you know, maybe even investing time in mentors and training and things like that. But investing time in things we really enjoy doing as our work, if possible. Something else with regards to outgoings and spending money on gifts was learning maybe the Japanese culture of re-gifting things that we find maybe beautiful but are beyond what we actually need. So if we've got really nice things but they're an excess, then we can pass those on. And also buying from when we do need to bring things in from independent people rather than big corporations. And then we talked about shopping and the practice of actually sharing with somebody when we're buying something, to tell somebody, I'm thinking of buying this, and so you don't make impulse buys right at the moment. You give yourself then time to think about whether it's something that you really need or not.
Yeah. Thanks, Nets. Is there anything else people want to add from the other group?
I wasn't in a group, but just on the kids thing, our family, particularly in the States, buys lots of stuff, especially around Christmas, and that's part of like how they show love and affection. And particularly my parents are like quantity kind of givers, especially with little kids. And I think initially, I've got a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old. I wanted to like get a handle on that, but I'm not going to change the people. And my kids actually love getting lots of stuff, and that's a whole other thing. But I wanted to say my sister does a really good job of managing this, in that she tends to give smaller gifts herself, and from a very young age got the kids like giving them money to decide on very special gifts to give to people or to make. And then when she receives gifts for her kids, even now they're nearly teenagers, she lets them keep like the special things, but then immediately puts toys like in her garage and holds on to them until the next Christmas, and then donates them to other, charities, or regifts them in the year. But she's done that since they're tiny, and that seems to really work for her. And I probably should have done that myself.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes we just don't have the brain space, do we, to think about all this stuff. But that's really helpful, Danielle. Thank you. So this afternoon, so how long have we got for kind of lunch break? And then when does the afternoon session kick off, Danielle?
The afternoon session, 12:30 to, we have lunch break now until 2. We're back for your session. If folks are in East London or Bristol, people are meeting in person for lunches, and there is a Manchester-based Zoom lunch on a different link that, that's happening.
Great. So I am going to be, just to let you know, I'm going to be on Zoom for an hour from 2. So if you have any questions, you want to dive into anything further, and also I offer minimalism coaching. So if that's something that you're interested in and wanted to chat to me about, I'm going to be on Zoom, same link as this afternoon. We've also got an activity for you to do that. So there's a blog to read called The Silent To-Do List, which is a really interesting concept, and some little activities to help you think about what to do with some of the stuff in your home. Also just want to say this minimalism covers so many topics, from environmentalism to setting boundaries with family. I really recommend, I've got a newsletter that you can sign up for on my website, and once a fortnight I send out just 4 or 5 really brilliant articles to help you further think about some of these things, because all of these practices are things that we're going to be wanting to embed for life. We've got so many new things to be learning about, so hopefully that newsletter will be a really, really helpful resource for you in your ongoing journey. And I just want to say thank you so much for being in the workshop today. We've had some amazing discussions, and I pray God blesses you as you kind of go forward in your day. Thank you, everyone.
Brilliant. And the PDF for the activity this afternoon is on that event page. Just kind of keep scrolling down. There's a link to it. And as August said, it'll be on the Zoom link from 2 p.m. So we'll see you later, and have a great lunch.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Very much.
Thanks.